Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Taoiseach, the last 12 months have not been a good year for people with disabilities. It's been a year of cutbacks, it's been a year of fear, anxiety, worry, frustration and anger. And the anger is mainly directed at government and at those in authority who don't seem to realise the impact of cuts on people with disabilities on the ground. And we're hearing this loud and clear from parents across the country on a continuing basis. And in a number of areas, Taoiseach, if I could highlight where this has been felt the most. Across the country, despite official rhetoric, special needs assistance have been cut from schools and children have lost their special needs assistance. In terms of school leavers, young people with disabilities who leave schools, there is no guarantee of placement for them at the end of this year, and there was none last year. There was about 700 people with disabilities coming out of school last year and this year. And I think it's a sad indictment on our society that the only children who cannot be guaranteed a place coming out of school are young people with disabilities.
Without interruption, please. Thank you.
And by official confirmation, yes, when we were there was continuing demographic funding. There was provision. This is the point. Demographic funding was an ongoing provision for young people leaving schools with special needs, and they were provided places, about 20 million per annum. Now, the HSE has confirmed that such places such funding has been got rid of. If I could take a case of Emma, for example, a young girl, 19 years of age, severe autism, severe epilepsy. The officials in the HSE could not help the mother or the family in this case. She needed full-time residential placement. And the officials said the HSE were not in a position to provide additional funding for school leavers in 2012, and this was the situation in relation to this case, and the Minister confirmed that to me in writing. And in terms of the review of the Domiciliary Care Allowance, there has been a ruthless review of the Domiciliary Care Allowance, and particularly insofar as it applies to children with autism. 60%, Taoiseach, of all applications for Domiciliary Care Allowance in the first 6 months of this year were refused.
Thank you, Deputy.
Half of children with autism were refused. And just to cite a case, Taoiseach,
so no,
a young child, Alex, for
question
example.
time. Would you please put
it's a very important point.
I know that, but you're over time.
I'll finish it very quickly now. Severe social impairment, challenging behaviour, speech delay, flight risk, constant supervision, a young child with autism. The Department of Social Welfare says that child is not entitled to a Domiciliary Care Allowance. The question I want to put to you, Taoiseach, will you accept that there was a lack of funding, of basic funding, provided coming out of last year's budget for people with disabilities, and particularly young people with disabilities?
Thank you.
And will you ensure adequate funding for school placements next year?
Thank you. Taoiseach. No, I don't accept that. As the Minister of State pointed out, there's 1.4 billion provided here. I'd make the point to you, Deputy Martin, that we should be very grateful to the service providers here who do an extraordinary job with limited circumstances. There has never been a guarantee, like you speak of, for children in this area. I don't know the case you're speaking of in terms of the young girl who has, or the young person who's autistic, who has a particular problem here. And you know, you can always find cases like this that are individual, that are sensitive and that are very important. And I'd advise you, let me have the details of that case. I don't know the actual case. How could I? But I'd point out to you, Deputy Martin, there was never a guarantee given in these for placements in these cases. Never a guarantee. There is 1.4 billion provided in the health area in general, and the service providers in these areas do an extraordinary job and are actually proving that they can do so much more with less. So I'd advise you and request you, if you wish, send the details of the particular case, of the autistic case you mentioned, to the Minister directly, and we'll see what the response is. I listened to a case this morning of an area where there was a claim that grants in a particular school had been terminated completely, when in fact there are many options open to deal with that as well.
With great respect, the system knows this case very well. I didn't raise it this morning so that you would take another leaf or file from me and process back around again. And this is a familiar response from you now when we're raising issues that are of systemic importance. So the issue here, Taoiseach, the issue here has been a decision of the government to get rid of, in its entirety, the annual demographic funding that was provided for young people with special needs who left school. And just in the case, it says, it was also stated by the HSE representatives, in this case, that they have not received any demography funding for new residential places in 2011 or 2012. Therefore, the HSE are not in a position to fund a full-time residential placement or shared care placements at the present time.
Question,
that is the root of the issue, Taoiseach, and basically summed up by a parent who wrote to me in relation to her child for next year. And the key point that really parents of children with disabilities are very angry about, because the way they look at it, and I'd quote, normally at age 18,
Deputy,
all students from the school should go on to
again, this
education.
is question time.
And children without special needs can move on to placement. They don't have the same issue. It's the children with special needs, Taoiseach, seem to have the biggest problem in getting placements.
Thank you.
And this can be dealt with and can be resolved, Taoiseach.
Thank you.
And the Minister, Minister Lynch was boasting about this last year, that she got rid of the demographic funding and the service providers were in a position to cope. The service providers are not in a position to cope.
Thank you, Deputy.
And they're telling people, and every member of this House that,
Deputy,
and we know it from the parents who are coming in
put your
to talk to us. So I'm asking you, Taoiseach, to sort out the broader problem and the broader issue, both, and avoid this targeting of people with special needs, both in terms of school placements and also in terms of the application of the Domiciliary Care Allowance. Because the most dreaded word for parents with disabilities today is the word review. Once they see review,
Deputy,
they get very angry and they get very fearful. Because review means special targeting.
Deputy, resume your seat.
People with special needs. That is what's going on, Taoiseach.
Taoiseach, thank you.
If I wouldn't draw the...
There's a time limit on this debate. Would you please allow the Taoiseach?
Yeah.
Would you please? Deputies, in case...
You're supporting them.
Deputies, would you please? Thank you.
Finian, you supported them.
Thank you.
We're part of the support mechanism.
Would you please allow the Taoiseach? This is leaders' questions, it's not statements. Thank you.
In fairness, Finian jumped ship.
Deputy Martin, you speak of targeting people individually. You yourself raised a case here of an autistic child who needs a placement. Now, I'm asking you, if you want that problem solved or you want that problem investigated properly, I'd invite you to send me the details of it. I'd also have you know that there's €1 million allocated out of the disability budget for autism specifically for dealing with these kinds of cases. So if you're going to bring an issue in here and you tell us not to target people, yet you raise a case, I'd invite you, if you want to have that case examined until we see what can be done here. The persons with disability, despite the fact of the economic circumstances that we face, have been protected to a better extent than any other sector. And there are always cases. You seem to assume, Deputy Martin, that you are the only one who has access to these people whose stories are told to me every day of the week. And everybody else in here knows that. It's not. These, unfortunately, are the fallout from the bank guarantee and the legacy that they have to deal with. In this case, Minister of State Lynch has left €1 million out of the disability budget to deal with autistic cases alone. And as you're well aware, there is an independent review being carried out of the service providers here in dealing with the case that you mentioned.